Hello everyone, welcome to today's lesson. Thanks for joining today. So for any of you who haven't been in my lessons before, my name is Naomi. I'm an English teacher. I'm from England in the UK, and this is part of an ongoing series for MPUB IELTS from Merseyside Publishing. And we are looking basically at how to get you the best marks possible in your IELTS writing score. So today we're going to be looking in particular at your IELTS academic writing. On Friday and Thursday we were looking at your IELTS general exam, but today this is specifically for anyone who wants to take the academic IELTS exam, or for anybody who wants to improve their written English. Really, this is going to be really helpful. So just going to make sure that everybody's here, get ourselves set up. For anybody that is new, my name is Naomi. I'm an English teacher, and any questions that you have you can leave in the comments and I'll try and get to you as we go, maybe at the end, maybe throughout, depending on how we get to. So hoping everybody is doing really well today. It's quite a foggy Monday here where I am in the UK. I'm going to share my screen with you. Here we go. So, as you can see today, is part of an ongoing series on how to improve your written English. And I'm going to be talking about some of my best tips for you. I actually went to Durham University in the north of England. So I really understand what are the most important skills you need to succeed at university in an English-speaking country. So that's what I'm trying to help you with today, not only to pass your IELTS exam, but to be prepared when you arrive at university or at your new job to have the best written English you can possibly have. Okay, so let's get going. Here we go, just making it a bit bigger for you. So we always started with this question in the other lessons as well, just because it's really useful to get a definition. So IELTS is the International English Language Testing System, and it measures the language proficiency of people who want to study or work where English is used as a language of communication. Places like the UK, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, they all use this test. Okay, so we have two types of tests. I'm actually going to move this up because we're looking at IELTS academic today. So we have two types of tests. We have IELTS academic and IELTS general. Like I said before, today we're looking at IELTS academic, which is for people applying for higher education or professional registration in an English-speaking environment. It tests you on academic language and assesses whether you're ready to begin studying or training. Okay, great. Let's just change this screen. I'm going to show my whole screen and then you can see the whole presentation. Okay. So, we're doing IELTS academic today, and we're just going over the reasons you need to choose this test so that you're making sure you're making the right choice. So these are things for the general test. The general test is often if you want to migrate there. The academic is for specifically if you want to go to university or professional training or a job that says you need IELTS academic. Okay, so let's get into it. What do I need to do to prepare? That was the big question. Well, a really important thing to prepare for any exam is to know the structure of the exam, inside out. So, what is the format of the IELTS academic exam? Well, in both academic and general, you start with listening. The listening will be 30 minutes long and you will get 4 recordings taken from different contexts. The listening and speaking are actually pretty much the same in general and academic, but reading and writing is where it's quite different. So in IELTS academic, you have 60 minutes, same as in general, and there are 3 long texts taken from books, journals, there should be a comma there, sorry. We all make mistakes, even English teachers. Magazines and newspapers. These will be written, as you can imagine, mostly in academic English writing style. So they'll be a bit different to the kind of reading you would get in IELTS general, which might be more of a social or more of an informal style of writing. You get 40 questions in total, and then the next section is writing. You get 60 minutes, and there are 2 tasks. In task 1, you must describe some visual information. That is just a table, a graph, or a diagram. And in task 2, you need to write a short essay of 250 words. Let's just get rid of this little sign at the bottom here. There we go, let's get back to it. So, then you go into the speaking, 11 to 14 minutes. You start with a little introduction, then a longer turn, and a discussion to finish with. So today, we will be looking at writing task 1 for academic IELTS. This lesson will be really helpful for anybody wanting to improve their written English, because we use written English in every part of daily life, whether it's emails, whether it's writing to a friend, sending letters, writing proposals. There's a whole range of things we use written English for, and formal written English in particular can really help in a professional context. And here in particular, of course, we're going to be looking at academic written English. But the skills that you use in academic writing, you can use a lot in formal correspondence as well. What do I mean by formal correspondence? Professional work, so emails, writing letters, any kind of communication at work in a professional context. So, how can you get top marks in task 1 academic IELTS? Any ideas? What do you think? How can you get top marks in task 1? Well, of course, you need to go into the exam super prepared. You need to go into the exam and really, it shouldn't be difficult for you. By the time you've got there in the exam, you should have practiced so many past papers that nothing will be a surprise. You know exactly what the test format is. You've done lots of practice with your teacher or at home, and you should be super prepared for that experience. Okay, that's my number 1 tip. Make sure you go in prepared. Very good. So, what do I actually have to do in task 1? What do I actually have to do in task 1? You will be asked to respond to a graph, a chart, or a table. So, even though it looks kind of academic, it's not scary at all. We see these graphs and tables in newspapers, on the TV, all the time. And What task 1 is basically evaluating is whether you understand this graph. You have to show that you can understand the graph and that you can also process the information and show that you've understood. Now, the reason you need to write an academic short essay to show that you've understood is that you need to kind of produce this graph again, but in your own words. Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that you might do at university a lot, which is why this is actually testing you on that. Okay, so as to respond to a graph, chart, or table, of course, you should write in an academic or formal, semi-formal style. We'll look at the implications of that a bit later. You must, oh my goodness, I spelt right wrong. I wonder if you would have noticed that. Let's change that. You must, as I say, we all make mistakes. That's why we need to check our work, isn't it? I should have checked my work. You must write a minimum of 150 words. If you write less, you will be penalised. Your marks will be lowered. If you write more, you won't be penalised, but the examiner's not going to read a really, really long essay. Yeah, don't write more than 250 words. That would already be quite long. Don't write more than that. The style of writing is descriptive. Are you giving your opinion? No. They don't really want to hear your opinion. You are just describing what you see, literally. Are you analysing and making a judgment on whether the information is true or false? No. You're just describing what you see, but you're doing it in a very sophisticated and formal way. Good. You don't have to analyse or give your point of view. Think of it like a summary. Great. What will I actually be marked on? What will I be marked on? 25% of your mark will be task achievement. So essentially, answer the question, don't give your own opinion, don't talk about another topic, whether it's related or unrelated. You don't need to bring in any previous knowledge, okay? Maybe this is a graph about renewable energy. Renewable energy, for example, in New Zealand, specific ways that they are using wind farms. Maybe you know nothing about that topic. I don't know anything about that topic. That is absolutely fine. For this task, you do not need to know anything about the topic you are given. Of course, it helps to know the vocabulary. That's where it's important to have a wide vocabulary. You need to not only be able to understand it, but have synonyms for the vocabulary you are given. This is why it's good to revise lots and lots of different topics in preparation for my exam. My next series will actually be on different common IELTS topics. Yeah? But it's not important to have previous knowledge, and even if you do, even if you are an expert on renewable energy in New Zealand, which is great, don't bring in examples outside of the graph. Don't bring in personal examples. You're just doing a summary. It's descriptive. Okay. Next one, coherence and cohesion. I had a few questions last time about what this means. So, what does it mean, coherence and cohesion? How can I show that I'm doing this in my written English? It just means, A, do they understand me? Coherence, am I being clear? And B, is it organised? Do the sentences link together and have a nice clear structure? Yeah, I don't want to just burble and say, wind farms in New Zealand are increasing and the trend is going up, and I can see from the graph that this is blah, blah, blah. You want to have a more sophisticated structure. We will look at that in more detail about the kind of structure you need in a minute. Then, vocabulary. So, if you go onto the website, onto the IELTS website, for vocabulary, it actually says lexical use of lexical structures or something like that. It basically means vocabulary. Lexis is another word for vocabulary. You need to have revised this topic. Even if you haven't, you want to try and use synonyms wherever you can, not copying words from the question, and using vocabulary that is related to this topic, as well as good academic written English vocabulary. Nice linking phrases, nice introductory phrases. We will look at some more of those in a bit. Super helpful. Then grammar. As always, it is an English test, isn't it? So make sure you are prepared and know how to use grammatical structures correctly, especially advanced grammatical structures, because it's an academic exam, isn't it? You need to have a very high level of written English. Good. Just checking that everybody's with me. Fantastic. So 25% for each of these. 50%, if you notice, is your actual English, your ability to use English correctly, vocabulary and grammar. But you could write the perfect essay, perfect grammar, amazing vocabulary, but if it's not related and it's not clear, you have no chance of getting to the higher bands. You need to do all 4 of these things to get that really fantastic high score. What not to do. So don't use bullet points. It's an academic essay. We need to use full sentences. Don't copy from someone or from the question. Last time I was talking about not copying from someone. This is the same in every language, isn't it? We're always told to not copy from everyone. This is called plagiarism. It's really serious. If we get caught, then it has very serious consequences. Our IELTS will be cancelled. We might even get a fine, or I'm actually not sure how it works. It's just better not to do that. But here, it's also good not to copy from the question. Especially in this task, you're being tested on your ability to summarize something. What does that mean? It means I need to show that I have the words to describe this in a different way. If I'm using the same words as a question, I'm not showing that I have that ability. Okay? Then, classic, don't go off topic. Even if you know loads about wind farms and other renewable energy, don't talk about other subjects, especially in this task, even kind of related subjects. You just want to stick to rephrasing that graph specifically that you've got. It's easy. We don't need to bring in anything else. Okay? Oh my gosh, what is wrong with my spelling today? What do I need there? I need a W, don't I? A silent W. This is a very good example of how we need to proofread, don't we? Don't write too many words. What was the minimum number of words for this task? Can anyone remember? It was 150. 150. So you want to make sure you are definitely writing 150, but you also don't want to be writing way more than that. Okay? You really don't want to be writing more than 250 words. That's kind of my guideline. Yeah, no more than 250. Okay, next one. Don't use informal language. This is a academic essay, isn't it? It's an academic essay, not informal language. Similar to this, don't use contractions or slang. What is slang? Slang is just any informal language, and it's also words in English in any different country. It's often different in each country, that is used in casual conversation. In England, we might say things like, oh my gosh, I look so uncool now, dead cool. Yeah, we use dead as like another word for very, but it's very colloquial, it's slang. Don't use it in your essay. Another thing, contractions are things like gonna, I'm gonna go to the shops tonight. In spoken English, in casual spoken English, that is great. You sound so natural, you sound really native, but of course, when we're writing academic English, you really want to avoid things like gonna, coulda, or even don't. What's the longer version of don't? It's just do not. Do not. So, any contractions, just write the whole thing. Just write the whole thing. You want to avoid them thinking that you don't understand how to write academic English, so simple one to avoid, write out the full 2 words. We've mentioned this before, but avoid using personal examples, especially in this task. We were talking about the general IELTS tasks. In the general IELTS exam, you can use personal examples. That is recommended. Yeah, you are encouraged to show that you can relate examples from your personal life and from other experiences to the topic. But in this task, it's really not recommended. Just information from the task, from the graph. Avoid emotive language. What do I mean by emotive language? Emotive language is emotional language. It's language that suggests a strong emotion or an opinion. Things like cruel, awful, filthy, ugly, these things, these words are not very academic and they are a bit too emotional, which is something I don't want to show in this academic essay because I want to be neutral. That's always the key in academic writing. I'm trying to show that I can be neutral, that I can be non-biased and take myself away from it, no personal opinions. Right? Don't try to use too many idioms. Idioms are fantastic. I love it when my students use idioms. It shows they're really getting to grips with the language. They're really starting to speak more naturally. But idioms are mostly informal. Yeah, they're mostly informal. And when you're writing academic English, this may come as a surprise, but you want to be as simple as possible. You actually want to be as simple as you can. Long sentences that use lots of words to describe a simple idea is not a good idea. You want to show you can be as concise as possible, and this includes idioms. In this part of the exam, I would try to avoid idioms. When would be a good time to use idioms? Probably in the speaking. That would be a great time to show all of these amazing idioms that you've been learning. Great, so we started with the negatives, not what not to do. Now, let's have a look at what to do. So, maybe even while I'm giving you this list, you can brainstorm. Write down on a pad of paper that you have with you some ideas of what to do, what not to do. You can put them in the comments and I will respond to you guys. Let's see if we agree, see if we can come up with some other ideas for what to do, what not to do. So you should plan your time well. There's 60 minutes in total for your writing, 20 minutes for task 1, 40 minutes for task 2, roughly. Because a third of your marks are for task 1 and 2/3 are for task 2. So logically, less time on task 1, more time on task 2. Good. We're going to be looking at how to structure your argument, so how to use your time well as well, in a minute. Stay on topic, just like we were talking about. Don't bring in other examples or talk about related topics, especially on this task, on the topic. Write full sentences. It's academic English and we don't want bullet points, do we? So use correct spelling and grammatical structures. This is a really great opportunity to use the time that you have left at the end really well. It is so important to check your work at the end of the test. The number of times that students forget to check their work and they have accidentally repeated words or spelt words wrong, just like I did in one of these slides because I didn't check. Yeah. In your exam, it can take you 2 minutes to just check, make sure that you're using the correct spelling, and you can check over your grammatical structures, think, is that tense right? Is that word order really correct according to what I've prepared? And this is a great way to just avoid losing marks for silly things. Remember, but vocabulary and grammar makes up for 50% of your marks. So you want to really make sure you're spelling things correctly and using grammatical structures correctly. What did I say? Check your writing at the end. Proofread. Perfect. Spend time understanding the question. When should I do this? Right at the beginning, I would spend 3 or 4 minutes out of the 20 minutes making sure I have understood the question correctly. You can make notes, you can scribble all over the question, make sure you've understood it correctly, because once you start writing, it's really difficult to go back. Paraphrase. Paraphrase just means use your own words. In this task, you're basically describing what you're given on a bit of paper in your own words. That is actually the whole task. Easy, right? Yeah. Now, how to structure task 1. As we know, and as you will especially know if you've been to any of my classes, I am a huge fan of planning. Planning is so important to make sure we get that cohesion and coherence, which we were talking about. Hi to anyone that's just joining now, thanks for joining. We're just looking at the academic IELTS writing task. We're looking at writing task number 1 in academic IELTS. So for your structure, I recommend 3 to 4 paragraphs, kind of including your introduction, and then if you do a conclusion, that would be your 4th paragraph. So in the first sentence of the introduction, you need to paraphrase the question. In a minute, we'll look at an example question so you can see what I mean by this. The table illustrates the trend in, or the graph shows. The table illustrates the trend in, or the graph shows. We'll have a look at an example of this in a minute. In the second sentence, you need to write an overview. So it's like a summary sentence. You're kind of explaining what you're about to write in the rest of the summary. I don't want to call it an essay because it's very short. An essay is quite a scary word. It's not really an essay, this task, yeah? It's a bit shorter. It's more manageable. Then learn synonyms appropriate for academic writing so you don't have to repeat yourself. So, for example, in academic writing, especially when we're talking about statistics or graphs and tables, we often use decrease, increase. It's good to have a few synonyms for these really, really common words so that you're not repeating yourself. We've got an example here, decrease, or go down, or descend. If you can think of any others, fantastic. Let's do a few more examples of some synonyms here. Let's just make the... Here we go. So we've got decrease. What about increase? We use this a lot in academic writing as well. What could be a good synonym for this? What could be a good synonym for increase? We could have go up. For example, the number of wind farms in New Zealand is going up every day. I might use increase in another sentence, so I want to avoid repeating that. Another synonym for increase. I don't know, another synonym for increase. We could have rise. Rise. That's a really good synonym. Let's go back to this one. Sharing my big screen. Hope everyone's really well today. I know writing English can be quite great. I've got some people saying growing, going up. Let's put that on. Oh dear. Here we go. Got some great suggestions here. Got going up. That is correct. Growing. Let's put that here. Rise, grow. Great. And let's share screen again. So let's get back to the structure. Those were some really good synonyms. That was great. So we've got an introduction, 2 sentences, it's perfect. 1, you're rephrasing the question. 2, you are writing an overview. Then you're going into paragraph 2, where you're outlining the main trends in the graph. In paragraph 3, you can go into even more detail. It really depends on what your graph or table is. Do loads of past papers, and you can find lots of model answers online as well, which are really helpful. Try to write a conclusion, because this makes your writing sound more complete, but it's not 100% necessary. If you don't want to use up your words doing this, or you run out of time, don't worry. I would always write at least 1 sentence summarizing. Ideal world, 2 sentences. It makes it look much more complete. Okay, but your choice. Your choice. Good. So here are just some more general academic writing tips. We were talking before about not bringing in personal examples in this task. So we want to avoid personal judgment words like I think, I feel, I believe, I am convinced that, I disliked, I liked, I agree, I disagree, I am sure that, it is my belief that. Here's your rule. Basically, don't use the word I. Yeah, don't use the word I. This task in particular is not about our opinion. So if you ever feel tempted to write, I think, or in my opinion, stop yourself and think, am I really answering the question? Because probably you're not. We want to really avoid those judgment words. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a little cross over them. Let's see if we can do that. Let's just cross these out so it's really clear. And so what kind of words, what kind of phrases do we want to use in academic writing? We want to use words referring to the evidence. So from examining the findings in light of the evidence from previous research, considering the results according to the figures, as shown in the diagram, it is evident from the data that the literature suggests. Given this information, got something showing us there. Good. Some theorists argue that. So first we're going to come back to this in a minute. So in a second, we're going to look at an example of a past paper. And after that example, we are going to do some example questions of answers that we could use in a model answer to this question. And we're going to use these phrases, which are really useful. So we'll be back to that in a minute. Now, some good connecting words to use. Why is it good to use connecting words? Because when we're writing academic English, using linking words is really, really helpful. We don't want to be listing ideas, do we? We want to be using lots of linking words. So, firstly and secondly. When do you think we would use firstly and secondly? So, firstly and secondly is used to, get rid of this. It's used to make lists. Used to make lists. So, firstly, the graph highlights blah, blah, blah. Secondly, it is important to note that blah, 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 blah. So this is for making lists. Sometimes appropriate, sometimes it's not. It's normally only when we have clearly 2 or 3 really important points to make. Yeah, so you can use those if you want to. If anybody has any other connecting words that are not on this screen that you want to check the meaning of or suggest, just put them in the comment, okay? So next, likewise, in the same way, or similarly. What are these words doing? Likewise, in the same way, similarly. So these are comparing things that are different or things that are very similar. They're comparing things that are very similar, aren't they? Comparing things that are similar or even the same. Good. Furthermore, moreover, is additional information. We looked at some of these in last time's lesson, but this is a more extensive list as we are looking at academic writing. However, although yet, these are for contrasting. If you want any examples of them, you can also leave the word in the comment. I'm going to do a few examples for them, but if you have a particular question about any, just let me know. For instance, or for example, is for, surprise, surprise, giving examples. As a result, consequently, therefore, accordingly, is for results. Let's say drawing a result. The clue is here, as a result. Particularly, it's for being specific. The graph highlights the problems between men and women in 21st century Britain. Particularly, the graph talks about, or the graph mentions, the difficulty that women have getting high-paid jobs. Yeah, you're talking about a more specific example. Despite, nevertheless, is talking about moving away from a negative thing. So it's kind of negatives and positives. Let's do this. And to summarize, ultimately, finally, in conclusion, these are good phrases for concluding the written task. Written task. Great. Good words to use, revise them, look up your own. You cannot get enough of these amazing connecting words. Now, let's make sure my screen is shared with you. Now, we are going to look at a past paper. So, this past paper is straight from the IELTS website. It's a great example of what you could see in the real exam. And there are loads more online, so this is a really good way to prepare for your exam, is looking at lots of past papers. So, it says you should spend about 20 minutes on the task. It says the chart below shows the number of men and women in further education in Britain in 3 periods and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. Summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So, what is the question asking me to do? It's asking me to summarise the information. Specifically, it's asking me to select and report the main information and, if I have to, make comparisons. So, if I look specifically at this table, what are the main features? Well, I have 2 sections, don't I, for male and female. I have 3 time sections, 1970 to 71, 80 to 81, and 90 to 91 for each gender, for male and female. So what is it actually comparing? It's comparing men and women in further education. What is further education? It's just at university. So I can already start thinking of my synonyms. Synonyms for men and women. I can say male and female students. Synonyms for further education, I could say university. I could say higher education. Instead of Britain, I could maybe say the UK. Although I think here it's probably best to stick to Britain because of the different specific areas of the UK, which is slightly different to Britain. So we'll stick to Britain. So I'm thinking of the synonyms. I'm looking at the specific information. I might need to compare, it says. So where are the biggest differences? Well, in 1970 to 71, there are less females in higher education. 1980, it's about the same. 1991, there are more females. So I need to start thinking of the trends in this graph, and also thinking, well, what's the difference between full-time and part-time education? So let's just give a few examples of sentences. So we said we'd go back to this part, didn't we? Let's just give some example sentences that we could use in our task. Not this one. Of course, we can't really write a full essay here because it would be too small on your screen, and we haven't really got time for that. I'm just trying to give you the best tips that I possibly can. So, which one should we take? Let's take according to the figures. According to the figures, less women were in higher education, but I'm already using a synonym. I'm already using a synonym, aren't I? Let's go back to the graph so that you can see it a bit better. Some people are saying you can't see it that well. So this is the main graph. We have male on this side. We have female on this side. And we're comparing the number of people that were in higher education in certain periods. So as we can see on the female side, it shows us that, well, less female students were in university than male in 1970 to 71. There are some other examples we can draw, and we're just thinking of some example sentences. So, according to the figures, less women were in higher education than men in the time period get rid of this capital, I don't need that capital, do I? 1970 to 71. Great. I've used one synonym, higher education instead of further education. I've used an academic phrase here. Let's try and do another sentence. We're going to use some more synonyms. So let's use from examining the findings. From examining the findings, another good phrase to use, it seems. It seems is good because you're avoiding using personal opinion or saying I think. It seems that, let's have a look. What does it seem? It seems that by 1990 to 91, more female students were in part-time higher education than men. From examining the findings, it seems that by, it's wanting to do this, 1990 to 91, more female students were in part-time university education than male students. I've got a good academic introduction to the sentence. This is very impartial, it's neutral. I'm not introducing my opinion. I'm using synonyms. I'm saying female students instead of men and women. I'm saying university education instead of further education. In that way, I am not repeating myself. What about, shall we use something from this slide here? If I want to lead on from that last sentence, I could use particularly. So let's have a look at the graph again, shall we? We need to remind ourselves, don't we? So in 1990 to 91, we have, okay, so we have more female students in higher education part-time, but what's the same between men and women? What's the same? Full-time education is pretty much the same, isn't it? So what can I use here for comparing things that are similar? Well, I can actually use, so it's different to the number of people in part-time education, isn't it? So we're going to use however. We're going to use however. This will become clear when I write the sentence. However, in the same period, what period am I talking about? 1990 to 91. However, in the same period, about the same, let's say again, this is really good, it seems that. So we're going to use a synonym for that. It appears that roughly the same number of men and women were in full-time higher education. Hi to anyone that's just joining now. We're now in the really nitty-gritty of writing some example sentences. So, from examining the findings, it seems that by 1990 to 91, more female students were in part-time university education than male students. However, in the same period, it appears that roughly the same number of men and women were in full-time higher education. This flows really well. I'm using really formal English. Am I introducing my opinion at all? No, I'm not. Am I sticking directly to the information that I have in my table? Yes, I am. These kind of sentences could probably go in my second or third paragraph because they're looking at more detailed information. In my first paragraph, I want to try and find a general trend. So I could talk about how between 1970 and 1991, female students at universities in Britain increased. And I could say that for men, this number fluctuated. Fluctuated just means going up and down. So that's a general trend. Here in these sentences, I'm looking at something specific. So this is good for paragraph 2 or 3. Great. So we're coming towards the end of our lesson now. I'm just going to show you these are some example responses that I have for this same question. This one is one that got band 5, so it's not very high. Ideally, you'd want to get a bit more, but it's still a pass. Okay, but it's not the ideal score. This one is band 7, I believe. Yes, band 7. So it's a bit more advanced. Both of these you can find on the IELTS website. If you go to IELTS example questions, you can go to sample answers, because they're quite small here, but so that you read them yourself, you can go onto the IELTS website and all the examples are there for this specific question. So you can go and look at that yourself. That would be really helpful. You can see some examples of answers that need to be developed a little bit more, and some examples of answers that are getting higher scores. Now, the examples on the IELTS website are really good, but they're kind of not enough. You need to look further, search on the internet. There are loads of model answers and lots of kind of examples of higher band scores. You can also look for really good academic English phrases, just like the ones we were looking at today. And if you have any questions or suggestions, you can put them in the comments here below. So I hope today's lesson has been really helpful for you. For anybody thinking of taking the academic IELTS exam, firstly, make sure you know why you're taking it, make sure you know that you need to take it, and then make sure you get yourself a good teacher, you're looking at these workshops, and that you prepare yourself in good time. I wish you all the best with your exam preparation, and I hope to see you in tomorrow's lesson, where we will be looking at task 2 of the IELTS academic exam. Have a great day, everyone, and hope this lesson has been useful. I'm Naomi, and this is Merseyside Publishing. Have a great day.